Hello and welcome. Carlton's second win in a row was headlined by a first half which held Hawthorn goalless. The first time the Blues had done that in 19 years. The Blues were ruthless in this one, suffocating Hawthorn into turnover as they applied themselves tremendously all over the field. From 22 passengers a few weeks ago to 22 performers the weekend just gone, this is how the Blues got a much needed win against Hawthorn. If we look at things statistically, you can visualise the dominance that was felt. Carlton destroyed Hawthorn in scores from stoppages, turnovers and defensive half chains. They had a season high for tackles and won contested possessions as well. What does this say? The heavy output of scoring from turnovers in mixture with tackles says Hawthorn struggled to have any form of stranglehold on the game as their ball use was panicky, and the contested possessions translated into Carlton's ability to score from stoppages, as they were hungrier for the footy. The overarching message from this is Carlton were clinical in their structure, in their work rate, in the way in which they applied themselves, and most of all, how they played as a team. Weeks ago I said this game taught me a lot. I simply think we're not doing enough as a team and working together cohesively. It's fair to say we've come a long way in that regard, and it's no coincidence that has come with new contributors and a more marketable, attractive brand of football. For the first time in weeks, let's dive into the analysis. There were quite a few sequences that struck me in terms of the short-term yet sizable improvement in our work rate and structure. This sums up how alert we were from the outset. You can see a fair bit of communication as per all the pointing going on from a number of players to help solidify the structure. Then you can see a switch of play to the fat side just as the numbers have flooded to the right of screen. The space between Harry and Scrimshaw gives off the perception the Hawks can get an exit out of the back 50, but Scrimshaw falls for it, and this plays into the advantage of Fogg, Doc, and thus Carlton. Both players read the direction of play, pushing towards the boundary as Scrimshaw traps himself there. Obviously, they're dealing with a 3-on-2, but that extra is useless as Scrimshaw would need to swing across and kick over Harry or bypass him to get the ball there. It's pretty smart positioning and allocation of resources. Doherty has worked his backside off to situate himself where he can mitigate the effectiveness of a lead behind him, whilst also being within reach of the Hawk in front of him. Fogg enforces the zone as well to block off where Weddle can accelerate towards, yet is close enough to enact the spoil, which he does here. That's the kind of difficulty Hawthorn were subjected to on their back 50 exits. Here's another work rate example which is done on an individual scale. Hawthorn struggled to score on the back of two-way running by the midfielders, who recovered exceptionally from attacking positions to defend. This is a fast-paced transition by Hawthorn, where Bruce unexpectedly marks on 2. And as you can see by habit, we're blocking the corridor, which is smart in eliminating the most direct and high percentage path to goal. Yet the counter to this is simply venture to the flanks. Blake Acres, who was damn good on the weekend, flags that Fergus Green is going to be alone, and not only makes up the ground from an unheard of distance, but also takes the mark. That's not only selfless, but it also takes initiative. This is one I love from Nick Newman, who in the space of about 30 seconds has 4 impactful moments. In this sequence, it shows our ability to make a mistake or be without possession, yet recover uncharacteristically quickly. Akers tackles and we regain, then Harry overcooks a handball. But here's Newman for impact play 1, then closes in to force another rushed handball for impact play 2. Then you can see play develop, and with the help of Harry and the Blues' suffocating strategy, Newman enacts impact play 3, and then intercepts to wrestle back possession with impact play 4. And it's interesting because it felt like Carlton's pressure was a result of overlap. And you're probably wondering how that makes any sense. Well, this is what I mean. Just as Carlton's midfielders and forwards were rushing into the back 50 as support, just as equally were defenders like Newman given the license to push up to the flanks and impact like this. There's countless more examples I could give where I could praise second efforts, good on-field intuition, and general team play. But these are just a few which I enjoy observing. That sets us up for the main point of analysis today, which is Jack Silvagni, who I think embodied these traits tremendously on the weekend and was one of my top performers. There couldn't be any more of a contrast impact-wise to his performance a few weeks back, which for the selection board warranted a place in the reserves. If we want to statistically look at his game, you can see the 1%ers, the tackles, the contested possessions, and hitouts to advantage, which all indicate that he was challenged, yet did not back down, and worked his backside off at practically every contest he was present in. On numerous occasions, he did well to get his hands dirty and on the footy first, to dish it out and turn a seemingly anticlimactic ending to a possession into something more fruitful. On this possession, he does well to get across to the contest and then commit himself to the next man in the chain, seeing that Weddle had already slipped over. And then he does a subtle flick, which via a bit of fortune ends up being a very high percentage chance at a goal. Was also pretty impressed at his ruck work. His opponents in Meek and Reeves are taller and stronger, and so JSOS was victim of conceding a few frees, but he competed. They don't have the athleticism that JSOS has, so he was able to capitalize and soar over the top at times. There were times he didn't even need that advantage and won the contest anyway. His follow-up work after the initial ruck contest was awesome, where he applied tackles that helped delay or eliminate the clearance entirely for Hawthorn. Nonetheless, the chance for midfield dominance was enhanced with JSOS in the middle. He also was incredibly clean with the footy. He was pretty strong in taking marks, and this aided the pace in which we played with. Further, it was also enhancing that work rate we were carrying on the day. On this possession, his clean pickup and give ensures momentum in the transition is sustained, where we could then pick out a target inside 50 with ease. There were also two notable kicks where JSOS kicks positively on the diagonal going into the corridor, rather than outward where defenses are less under duress with less outlets to cover and protect. And so you benefit the next player in the chain as well, because their options also expand on the next kick. I do like how Blues players remained proactive and provided variety in the ways in which they led. On this example, the amount of activity on the wing sort of was a decoy for Ed to sneak out the back here. Courtesy of the coverage, I cannot see how he got so open, but that counts for naught if you can't hit the target, which JSOS did to perfection here. Overall, JSOS had an exceptional, well-rounded game that was highly impactful for the way in which the team performed, and was the perfect response to what had been a rough patch of performances riddled with scrutiny in the weeks prior. Ladies and gentlemen, this does not mean we play without a ruck next week. Jokes aside though, happy to see him performing like many others. Speaking of others performing, some simply do their job week after week and don't get an awful lot of praise. So this week I'm giving that praise to Jordan Boyd, who is fast becoming one of my favourite players. I like this play where even though he doesn't apply the tackle, just the congestion he creates as he kills off a fluent exit is so effective. If the Hawk has more time, players further afield have time to lead up and present. Equally, the kicker can hit this target. Instead, the kick is rushed and it's not benefiting a lead because it isn't directed anywhere in particular. This one here sort of says more about the instructions given, but Boydie occupying space in the middle means that whilst Moore has space to run, he's only testing that on the outside. Hawthorn have some numbers over here, but Boydie eliminating a more corridor-centric push forward means Moore being a small can't get the kick to those guys because, like before with the Harry Scrimshaw play, it's an awkward angle where the kick must go over the man and a long kick is also required. Boydie can afford to slowly close in and allow Moore to carry it to have this effect, because Moore doesn't have any supporting runners on the wing. Often you'll see Boydie come up to the stoppage and just sit on the back directly behind. You can see Sardi to the right of screen here, favouring that left side obviously. Boydie's got a pretty above average kick of the footy, so putting him in a position where he can be the dump off kick serves as an advantage. And it holds an influence that can be depicted through a player like Cincotta in these examples, where we can recoup possession and concede ground only to send the kick back where the ball came. I also found it pretty impressive for a player of his size to be able to withstand a Hawks tackle attempt on numerous occasions, which embodies that ferocity we possessed on the day. Was pretty happy with his spoil attempts and sometimes intercept marking as well. There's one here where the spoil buys time for Ed Curnow to come across, and even though Boyd gets outnumbered initially, the loopy handball over the top cements our ability to rush the behind and avert danger. Did find that as a part of our zone, the backmen would often be further in front of their direct matchup, and this applied for stoppages and open play. This is where some of the ability to intercept came about. And the good thing about us locking it in our forward 50 for an extensive period was that players like Boyd could slowly push that last line higher and higher up the ground to the point where shots on goal were on offer as Hawthorn continued going on the defensive. And then we talk about the pressure he applied. He did give Connor McDonald some chances early, but he was clamping his opponents up from then on. I like this intuition where it seems like Doc has come up as a halfback to become an extra number. Notice Will Day is probably ready to dispatch the ball into their 50 or gain a few extra meters because he's probably going to clear Doc. But Boydie comes across, blocks that passage, and applies enough pressure, forcing the handball over a kick, and applies enough pressure for this handball to be errant. And look, the ultimate team play. I'm spewing I couldn't find the second occurrence of this happening, but this is just a heads up play from Boyd to utilise that advantage. Weeks ago I couldn't see a block or shepherd, let alone one this effective, and coincidentally it actually leads to a score. Whilst these aren't necessarily things that are too eye-catching, nor are they moments of brilliance. It's a portrayal of just doing what's expected. And believe it or not, that for weeks was something players couldn't actually do. So it deserves to be praised. To sum it up, here's a play that merges everything we've discussed all throughout today, with the players featured. First, you can see Boydie with his tendency to be the dump kick, to help us repel Hawthorn's attack in favour of our own, actually shrugging the tackle in the process, which we also mentioned. Then you've got JSOS being a trooper to fight through Morrison, who was trying to aid Frost by putting on a block, but JSOS turns an outnumber into a positive punch forward and in a centralised area. Newman comes up to force the error, Harry doesn't flinch as he attacks it, and then you've got both of those guys plus Cunners working to lock it in. Need I say more? I don't think so. So there you have it. It's easy to get carried away with 2 big wins, but we needed some form of stability after a rough patch, and we've got it. The football looks more recognisable and reminiscent of the kind of footy we displayed last season. We've set the standards, but for September action, these are the standards we must meet weekly. It won't be easy, but who wants it easy? It'll tell our story. Thanks for tuning in. And be sure to subscribe if you want to remain tuned for the analysis that follows next weekend's game. Enjoy the week, and bye for now.